Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician. This is Holomancer, and of course, this is the daring reporter Dora.
We are very glad to see you all again.
Let's get started.
Today we'll talk about the legendary cards in the Ashes of Outland set that are worth investing in.
We will try to identify the most important cards in the current meta game, as well as cards that have potential with support from future expansions.
We have decided to change up how we made a list for this video.
To do this, we collected a huge amount of data on each card, such as popularity after release, current popularity in Standard and Wild, win rate in both modes, and most importantly, the prevalence of using each card in different archetypes. Then, we added all the data to a table in which we were able to determine the best and worst cards.
As you know, throughout the Year of the Dragon we have received very powerful legendary cards, but they have had very narrow applications.
In a past video we recommended not spending gold on buying new packs. We are convinced that the most profitable solution is to craft missing cards.
However, in this expansion we received powerful and, more importantly, fairly universal cards that can be used in several different decks. On the other hand, despite their prevalence, the new cards did not result in many new decks. In most cases, they just complement old archetypes.
So let's finally talk about the cards that most deserve your dust.
Let's start with the most useless card. Magtheridon was awarded this title. 1% of players tried to use it after its release, with poor results. You can still find this card in some experimental decks, but its win rate is very small.
Bulwark of Azzinoth, the warrior's legendary weapon, did not find a place in the standard metagame. In the wild, less than 0.5% of players experiment with this card in the mill and control archetype, but the win rates of these decks are terrible.
Allah is an almost useless neutral legendary card for standard mode. In wild, less than 0.33% of players try to use it in some versions of Resurrect Priest and Face Hunter. The only advantage of this card is a slightly positive win rate.
Lady Vosh is another useless card. Despite the fact that 13% of shamans still use it in the Highlander archetype, the win rate remains too low. This card will most likely have no future.
Next in line is the legendary hunter card Beastmaster Leorox, a powerful card with a fairly narrow application. After the expansion's release, hunters tried to experiment with this card in standard mode, but over time it completely disappeared from all archetypes. Despite this, stubborn players still try to find a place for it in some Highlander and Quest archetypes. According to HS replay statistics, the games this card are played in have a good win rate for both standard and wild modes. Currently, Leorox is a fairly useless card that may become better in the future.
Throughout the expansion, druids have not shown any interest in Iciel Wind Singer in standard. However, this map proved to be an important wild tool for druids in the Malygos archetype. The card has 0.5% of popularity, and an incredibly win rate, over 80%. This means that 80% of the games in which this card hit the field ended in victory, an excellent result. Iciel could be much higher on our list, but the low popularity of Malygos Druid and the very narrow application and uselessness of the card in standard hold it back.
In 19th place is another Druid card. It seems the Druid was the least fortunate class for legendary cards. Spore is a very specific late game card. Only 11% of Druids use this tool. The win rate of this card is not particularly impressive. In the wild, the card shows slightly better results.
It's time to talk about the lurker below. It seems that the shaman was also unlucky with legendary cards. The lurker below is an extremely interesting card with a unique removal effect, but it is a bit weak. The developers tried buffing the card, but sadly it did not help much. Only 9% of shamans use Meshifan in different versions of the Highlander archetype. Its popularity in wild is less than 1%. We found this card in the Spell Shaman deck.
In 17th place is Akuma, the legendary creature of the rogue. This is a fairly powerful card that is highly popular in standard, and is used in different versions of the Galakrond archetype.
Galakrond archetypes are very popular and effective. Why is Akuma only in 17th place?
Firstly, this is an optional card, meaning it is not necessarily needed for Galakrond decks. Secondly, in wild the card has very low popularity and efficiency.
Next on the list is Kargath Bladefist. At first glance, the results of this card look rather weak. We are not impressed by the popularity and low efficiency of the card in both modes, but the card has one main advantage: universality.
In our opinion, the most profitable cards for crafting are cards that can be used in several archetypes at once. Potentially, this card has a chance to gain power with more expansions if Control Warrior is reborn from the ashes. Also, it may not be a bad addition to other archetypes in the future. On the other hand, it will sadly most likely remain a card that can be replaced.
Let's move on to the next card, which can also be replaced. Reliquary of Souls has a very interesting effect, but unfortunately this seems insufficient for widespread use in other archetypes, other than Highlander.
Now let's discuss legendary Warlock cards. Canrathad Ebonlock almost disappeared from standard mode after the balance change. Nowadays he can only be found in unpopular versions of Zoo Warlock. But at the same time, the card occupies a very important place in the wild, demonstrating good efficiency in archetypes such as Cube, Discard and Highlander. Kalidan the Breaker also shows good results in wild mode, and has slightly higher performance in standard than the previous card. Still, both cards are optional and can be replaced by other cards.
Next in line is Zixor, Apex Predator. A great card with great potential, which found its place in the Highlander archetype and some versions of Dragon decks. 40% of hunters use it. Nowadays, this card is more popular than ever. In wild mode, Zixor is also quite effective.
11th place is occupied by Lady Liadrin. This is an important tool in both the standard and wild modes for the new pure paladin archetype. This playstyle is likely to stay with us for a long time, at least for the next 2 years. The card deserves your attention as it has a very high win rate in both modes.
The first of our top 10 cards is Teron Gor Fiend. This is a very specific card with great potential for addition to and creation of unexpected archetypes. You can find him in Egg Warrior, some versions of Face Hunter, and even sometimes in Galakrond Warlock. In addition, it shines brightly in some versions of popular archetypes in Wild, although it's not a main card.
Let's talk about mage cards. Astromancer Solarian is a good card in the most popular and effective mage archetype, Highlander Mage. The card is very popular in both modes and has very good efficiency. The second card is Evocation. This is a unique card that gives you great value, but players use it too rarely. Only a third of mages found a place for this card in their decks. However, this is one of the most universal cards in the set, and it will definitely remain relevant after the release of the future expansions. For the wild format, this is also a very important card, especially for the quest archetype.
In 7th place is Murgurgle. This little but very impudent Murloc is truly a must-have for every paladin. The card is quite universal and fits into several archetypes, not just Murloc Paladin. In 6th place is Maiev Shadow Song, the most controversial card on our list. Maiev deserves such a high place due to her huge popularity and use in many different decks. The main disadvantage of this card is low efficiency in both modes. In addition, the effect of the card isn't very unique, and can be replaced by other cards.
In the top 5 is Kel'Thas Sun's Strider. This gift from the developers turned out to be very useful. Thanks Blizzard.
In 4th place is Shadow Jeweler Hanar, a very important card for all rogue archetypes that use secrets. This is definitely one of the most influential cards in the current metagame. More than half of all decks use it. If you are a rogue player, this card should already be in your collection.
Soul Mirror is one of the most unusual removal cards in the game. It is a universal card that is utilized in many decks and archetypes. The card is very useful in Wild. We are sure this card will be used for a long time.
And finally, we need to discuss the 2 most influential cards in the game. It is no surprise that they belong to Demon Hunter. 90% of Illidan's use Kain Sunfury. Incredibly large popularity and very high efficiency make this card very preferable for crafting. Metamorphosis shows even more impressive results. The card is extremely flexible, and is used in a variety of decks. If you are a demon hunter, you have little chance of success without this card.
As you can see, Ashes of Outland contains a large number of interesting cards, but not all of them are necessary to craft. I hope we were able to help you determine the next legendary card you will craft.
It is time for our final questions. How many cards from this list do you have? How many legendary cards do you think will remain relevant after the release of the next expansion? Let us know in the comments, and respond to our poll.
As always, we want to express our gratitude to our patrons. Dear friends, your support is invaluable. With all my robotic heart, thank you very much. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for being with us.
And special thanks to Chris for text editing.
We will meet in new videos.
Good luck.
Huh?